was Fiddler in Roots was the same as what's his name? Samuel L. Jackson was in Django. And I'm gonna tell you about him too, because he was actually he was the owner of the plantation of Candyland, not Leonardo DiCaprio. But Fiddler was telling them, let me teach him what he needs to know. And the crazy part is, in the movie Roots, when they do that pan of that scene, the little black kids they showing and the ladies they showing, those were not the slaves. Those were tenant farmers. These are the Americas, North, Central, and South. So these three are the Americas right here. So when we say the President of America, understand they're talking about the United States Republic, which is a corporation, not the entire all three. The entire all three is just like calling yourself an African. Which country in Africa are you a part of? You can't say, oh, I'm an American. Which one? What do you mean? Are you North American, Central American, or South American? Because now we understand the question when somebody tells you that the Africans were brought out of Africa to Americas. Your following question should be, which America? When?
Thank you.
And which America were they brought here? They're talking about the British colonies, which we know as the 13 colonies. Man, that was so later after the fact. The British were so fucking far behind. The British got in on the last couple of years of trading, because at the time that they were bringing Negroes supposedly out of Africa, there was nothing for them to do here yet. Not yet. Cotton don't come to the 1800s. 1808, they outlawed the export or import of people from Africa. It's outlawed. Like it was
Correct.
A law of the sea. We catch you with niggas on the boat, we're gonna lock y'all up and set them free. Outlaw. So 1808, there were no more Negroes coming to America. How many were brought to North America? They say millions. A lie. That's a lie. So let's debunk that, and let's get it out of our minds right now that any part of you came out of Africa. And this is nothing against our African brothers and sisters, but they know that also. That's why ain't not one fucking canoe been over here yet to get you. So now that we understand that, I'm gonna show y'all one more thing that we're gonna move forward. Now that we understand that the way they taught us about Africans out of Africa to the Americas is not only is it false information, it's misleading information. Who taught you that you from Africa? Who gave us the out of Africa theory? I'm gonna give you the individual's person name, write him down. Franz Boas, the father of modern anthropology. Now, following him, you get Dr. Leakey. And Dr. Leakey talks about Zanzanthropus, the oldest supposed Homo sapien out of Africa. So the idea implanted in your head is a bunch of pseudoscience. You get Franz Boas. You get what's your boy name with the dealing with evolution?
Darwin.
Pseudoscientists. Who else? German scientists such as Johann Blumenbacher, Samuel Morton, and so on and so forth. The idea you coming out of Africa was propagated by individuals not even from Africa. You can't find not one Negro philosopher or anthropologist at that time that was talking about Africa. That was later, when you get years later in like the 60s and 70s, you get Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben Joseph, rest in peace to everybody, and Chancellor Williams and so on and so forth, talking about the destruction of a black civilization, and they came with that information later. All right, but if you want to think you from Africa, that's cool. That's cool. Just study Franz Boas first, and then let's circle back on the conversation about those slave ships, because I don't rock with that. Now, what you may be mistaking the transatlantic slave trade for is this right here: domestic slavery. Now, domestic slave trade is what affected us the most. When I say us, the so-called Negroes, that's when you start seeing auction for Negroes for sale stores, and those pictures you've been seeing when they say that Negroes for sale and they look like Native Americans, because that's who they're selling after the 100-year war. See, America was in a state of war from the time of 1619 up until 1965 against these so-called Aborigine individuals in North America. the United States, also known as domestic slave trade or second middle passage. This is the movie 12 Years a Slave, when the brother was in New York shopping with his family. And then they took him down to D.C. to play the violin, and they got him drunk and threw him in the chambers. And they took his ass from D.C. all the way around Florida, which looks like they're coming from Africa, up into New Orleans. This is 12 Years a Slave, the movie. And when he got off the boat, he was rubbing his eyes, and you didn't pay attention to that boat was a skiff, not a slave ship. See, the word ship and boat, y'all don't know maritime law, maritime operations, so you think they're the same thing. No. This was just a cargo boat or cargo ship. If you pay attention to the movie 12 Years a Slave, when he got off the ship into New Orleans, there were like barrels of whatever. There was like stacks of cotton, and only about 12 of them got off. And then they went to one of these little auction stores right here, and then that's when the white man sold him off. Told him to play the violin and sold him off to a woman from her family. See, this is the second Atlantic slave. This is the second domestic slave trade, second middle passage, excuse me. This is the one that tore us up here in North America. They brought a lot of brothers and sisters from the north, and they brought them down around Florida into New Orleans and Mississippi into Alabama. This is when the South was known as King Cotton. Tenant farmers. We have to understand sharecropping and tenant farming. And what Hollywood would often do, Hollywood would give us the story of out of Africa, but only show us slavery during the 1800s. Django, 1800s. Roots, 1800s. 12 Years a Slave, 1800s. Color Purple was the early 1900s, but still, you would never see a slave movie take place in Africa. Other than what? One movie. There's only one movie that the African slave trade portrays, and that's Amistad. That's the only slave movie they got about out of Africa. Those other movies that we think are the African diaspora and the Atlantic slave trade, that's actually what was called the second Atlantic slave trade, the domestic slave trade, because in 1808 they outlawed international slave trade. So no more so-called Negroes were brought into the Americas. And a question I like to ask my people is, who solely believe in this out of Africa theory via slave trade, is which America did they come to with slaves?